Welcome to Cage Fighting, answering the big questions in film. Hello from me, Andy Gillard.
Hello from me, Stu Hall.
And hello from me, Matt Guy.
This week, obviously, as you fellas know, we've had to watch a couple of films in order for our first ever picture pod. We're excited to discuss National Treasure and National Treasure Book of Secrets.
Ecstatic.
Yeah, brilliant, weren't they? I think before we get into the film discussion, what we should do is just quickly touch on the fact that our beloved Nick Cage has been cast as Joe Exotic. How are we feeling about this news? I mean, it'll be his first TV role in, I think, forever. It will be his first sort of like TV role where he's going to be doing more than just an odd cameo. It'll be his first sort of starring TV role. It seems quite odd for someone of his stature to now go back and do TV work. Quite intrigued by that.
I can't believe it's even being made into something else other than Tiger King just being left alone, just to flourish in its own genius. But if you were casting anyone in the world, why not cast Nicolas Cage as the main one himself, Joe Exotic? It's just amazing news.
Yeah, I echo that. I think from a casting point of view, I think it's going to be fantastic and something that I think we're all looking forward to, the car crash of watching Joe Exotic again, and how excellent that was to begin with. And I think the casting is going to be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to it, and I just hope it's as batshit crazy as I think it's going to be.
I had a quick look, and it's going to be showrun by someone called Dan Lagana. I believe that's how it's pronounced. He worked on American Vandal. Have either of you seen that one? Because I know that was on newish on Netflix a year or two ago. He was also worked on Malcolm in the Middle and something called Zack Stone is Gonna Be Famous, which I confess I've not heard of. But looking at like those three, when I've looked on IMDb, that Zack Stone is going to be famous is a comedy. Obviously, we know that American Vandal and Malcolm in the Middle are comedic shows. So I imagine this is going to be trying to get comedy out of something that is already quite mental. So
yeah.
I'm genuinely intrigued to see how this is going to play out.
Do we know who's going to play that bitch Carol Baskin?
Official name.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone else has been announced at this stage.
Oh, okay,
all we know about is obviously Nicholas is going to be front and centre.
Full disclosure, the opinion of Carol Baskin is not that of Cage Fighting, but that of Joe Exotic.
So yeah, that's a bit of Nick news for the week. So I think let's move on and talk about National Treasure.
Oh, your accent. Pennsylvania Dutch?
Saxony German.
Oh.
We start in the attic, which is immediately where I want to stop things and say, what the hell is going on? Why have we got Christopher Plummer playing the grandfather? And then you've got John Voight, who is 9 years younger. I actually looked this up. He's only 9 years younger, playing his son. How on earth did they think that was going to play? And the only way they tried to differentiate it, that it was supposed to be 30 years ago, is by banging a really shitty wig on John Voight. It was terrible. And I thought, well, this has very much set us up for the rest of this film, hasn't it?
Because when you said wig, I thought this could be a number of people.
It was a very, very wiggy film, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there was no wig whatsoever. It just looked like a wig.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's because it had been so long. I mean, I vaguely remember watching it, and I could quite honestly have been quite drunk at the time. So for me, it was almost like watching two brand new films. I mean, the second one was a new film to me, but this one, I don't even remember the attic scene from when I first watched it.
It's forgettable though, isn't it? At the beginning, it's just such a massive exposition dump right at the top of the film to say, here, you need to know all this information, but they throw it at you so fast that by the time you get to when they're on the boat, the Charlotte, that you've forgotten everything that's just happened.
It was almost like they'd put it in at the end because no one knew what the hell was going on.
Yeah,
that's what it seemed to me. I'm guessing that it wasn't, but that's how it seemed, like it was just thrown together. It didn't match the pace or the lighting or anything else in the whole film. It was just like a separate thing, just tacked on.
I know what you mean. I wrote down in my notes, I completely thought I had the wrong film on. I thought I was watching Jumanji because it just had to fit. It had the same kind of elements of Boy climbs up ladder. Is the ladder going to creak? Is there going to be a step that breaks? I thought, "Ooh," but then it was kind of a bit of a strange. And I thought it was setting up more of a daddy issues kind of thing between obviously young Nick Cage and his father there, and then it shoots straight into Nick Cage as a cast member of E17 Stay Now, which was just hilarious to be fair, and then we're off to the races. Strange start to the film, but I suppose it sets the scene, it sets why we're there. It doesn't allow for any interpretation. I guess it's like, this is what we're going with, enjoy it or like it and lump it.
Yeah, but like you say, you go straight into that scene where they're heading towards the boat, where it's in the Arctic Circle, so they're obviously all dressed up in their parka coats, and straight away you see Sean Bean, and it's, you're the bad guy, aren't you? You know immediately he's going to be the bad guy. It's just telegraphed straight off. Maybe it's just because he's got a British accent. I don't know what British accent, because one minute he sounds like he's from Reading, the next minute he sounds like he's Jimmy Muir from When Saturday Comes. It's ridiculous. But he's English, so he's got no excuse for that wandering accent. It's awful.
I was surprised about that, because you do get those vibes very early on, don't you, that he's a rotter. But the payoff for him being evil was incredibly early into the film. For me, at least, like, it's really early on into the film that actually this guy's the bad guy. I don't know every film needs a villain, or especially adventure films like this, but it felt really early that we found out that he was the bad guy. It wasn't when we're 3/4 of the way into the film and we're that close to a discovery and then he betrays him. It was super early, and I thought that's actually felt quite refreshing in a way to not have that just happen and when we expect it.
Yeah, I like that, because it was like, it's just out the way, so you can he's got the mission at hand anyway, and now he's got an added adversary to fight against to get there. And the accent thing, I thought at first, when he first spoke, I thought, oh, it's just posh Sean Bean, this is new.
Yeah.
And then he went back into sharp, and then he turned into Jimmy Muir, and it was just really, really odd. But I think, unlike in GoldenEye, when you don't know until late, again, it's about halfway through the film when you realise what he's like in GoldenEye. With this, it must have been about a third of the way in, and it worked. It worked for me.
Well, it wasn't even a third of the way in. It was 25 minutes or so into the film when we find out, and it's a 2-hour, 11-minute film. Yeah, I timed it because I thought it dragged. But that's another story, and we'll get to that point. But yeah, I think the film was very paint by numbers, but I did like the fact that it sets its stall out early doors and just says, look, this is what it is. Don't expect anything more. So I suppose you don't get your hopes up. You know it's just going to be middle of the road, I suppose, is the politest way to put it. I think in my notes I did put, it's almost like Indiana Jones for idiots, I think was how I described it. But yeah. So yeah, we're on to the Charlotte, where Sean Bean decides to turn on our hero. One thing I noticed, why when they try to blow up the Charlotte, surely that gunpowder wouldn't still be working. It's been sat exposed to the elements of the North Pole for what I presume is decades upon decades of time, yet it still explodes. And then once it's exploded and you just see Nick Cage and Riley, Benjamin Franklin is Nick Cage's name. I've written that down because I've got a point about that in a moment. So yeah, when Ben and Riley come crawling out of the wreckage, and there's just like weirdly a tire on fire, and like, where the fuck has a tire come from? And there's no soot damage or anything to them. I just thought this film is going to be wild, and it just was. It really was.
Well, the gunpowder thing, I thought, well, the same thing. At first, I thought, well, how long does residue of gunpowder last? Just on clothes and stuff, and that's about, what, 6 hours? After you fired a gun with gunpowder in it? And it's gone after 6 hours. So this has been there for 40, 50 years.
Well, and the rest.
It's almost like the start of Transformers. Wiki. in the Arctic Sea.
Yes, yeah.
See,
I know the scene.
it all comes back to Transformers, Andy. You know it does. No, I didn't click that he was going to be villainous at all until that moment.
Oh, right, okay. So it was a nice surprise for you.
Yes, it was a nice surprise. I mean, considering I completely forgot the whole film as well. It was like, oh no, he's gone bad already.
I think there was a line where he says he's disappointed that the treasure wasn't there when Ben said it was another clue, and then you think, this guy's money motivated, which means only one thing: he's a wrong un. So that's when I think we knew at that point, really. You mentioned like paint by numbers, and I know it's a point that you wanted to bring up anyway about it doesn't allow you to get confused because it gives you all the answers to trying to like solve the clues, even in a way that I, as the viewer, cannot follow.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, Matt. For anyone who has watched South Park, you may remember when Jeff Goldblum, or someone was supposed to be Jeff Goldblum, was in an episode, and the logic leaps that he was making to get to these ideas were ridiculous.
Butt sex.
Butt sex?
Butt sex requires a lot of lubrication, right? Lubrication. Chupacabras, the goat killer of Mexican folklore. Folklore is stories from the past that are often fictionalized. Fictionalized to heighten drama. Drama student. Students at colleges usually have bicycles. Binary. It's binary code.
Like, he would go from A to B, or no, he wouldn't. He'd go from A to Z, but he'd go to Q and then back to B and then W. It was all over the place, but he somehow always got to the end. It made no sense. And as a viewer, you sort of need to feel like you're in with him. And at no point did you ever feel that. You always felt like he was 10 steps ahead or maybe 5 steps behind. You were never quite sure of where you were with him. And I struggled with that for large portions of this movie.
Yeah, exactly. You want, in any kind of treasure hunt, everyone wants to be a treasure hunter. Everybody wants to find, get through the mystery, and you want to be able to solve it as you're going along. I certainly did. I'd like to be able to think, okay, so this is the key, this is the answer, this is the riddle, this is the anagram, anything. And it's told to you very quickly in a way that I would never have worked out. Almost like watching Countdown and watching Rachel Riley work it out, because I might as well not take part. And it was incredibly forced down your throat. Just accept that he knows what he's talking about. It doesn't need to make any sense to you, the viewer. Don't worry about that. Just enjoy the film.
That's exactly how with me being kind of the opposite of how you see things sometimes. When it was a case of it's so mad that you've got no clue, I wasn't bothered. I wasn't bothered in the slightest. I thought, okay, sit back. Let's see how mad it possibly can get.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, fair.
And I thought, well, because all them things, I'm pretty shit at solving these films, any kind of film anyway. There's plot, like who's the murderer and all this stuff. I'm always the last one to find out, regardless of what film it is. It might as well be Paddington 2. Who knows? But but with this one, it was as soon as they said, oh, okay, where's it written? Which we'll come to in a minute. I thought, oh, of course it is. Why wouldn't it be written there?
Which brings us on to the next part of the film, which is where they decide to steal the Declaration of Independence. Because for some reason, the map was on the back of the most famous piece of paper in probably the whole world. So yeah, they have to now break into, what was the name of the place they have to break into? Honestly, this film confused the crap out of me. It was all over the place. And obviously, maybe not being American, maybe that did play a part in it. But I did feel like I need to hold on to something just to know where I'm going. And no point did I ever have that.
There was a lot of things in there, I think, because of that thing, because we are English. And I had no clue what was going on. And is that thing out on display all the time? Is it in a spinny round room where it goes at night to hide? Any of it could have been completely real, and I've got no idea. But I just went with it. Because I still don't know. I still don't know if it's there, if it's under bulletproof, if there's guards outside. It looked like an art gallery. Is it an art gallery? Probably not. It's
Well, what we can do apparently is go to the National Museum. Oh no, sorry, the National Library, and they've got the plans for the whole place in there. Because I would imagine that's the kind of thing that everyone should have access to. Just ridiculous.
This is America, baby, and I know my rights. I want the rights to this incredibly important building.
But yeah, so that was weird. But we did get to meet Diane Kruger, who for me was probably the best thing in the film. I thought she was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed her role. She was actually a strong woman who had her own agency, that she wasn't just there. I mean, we'll get to it in a bit, but I know she does get kidnapped and forced into bits. But actually, she was a smart woman who had her own role, which doesn't always necessarily happen in these type of movies. So I will applaud this movie for that, if nothing else. And it might be nothing else, to be honest.
Yeah, I think because we've got Riley as the sidekick, we don't need to have another characters whose kind of intelligence gets insulted throughout the film, because he is that kind of comedic kind of relief there, where he's a bit, I wouldn't say dim-witted, but he's the young, impressionable character that we can kind of have a bit of a laugh at. And I think you're absolutely right about her role. She's obviously very attractive and very successful woman.
Oh, she's gorgeous, isn't she?
Yeah,
Just
I mean,
stunning.
it's funny. My wife, one of the only comments she's made as she was watching the film with me was, well, this film is unrealistic. Not because of the heist, not because of anything that happened in it. She'd never be with him. She'd never be with him. Well, yeah, but it's true. It is true, to be fair. But yeah, I think you're right on the point there about the strong female lead.
But your wife does actually make a semi-decent argument there that I can kind of get on board with, because that whole will they, won't they, I never bought into for 1 minute. I found it quite upsetting at points. It wasn't a will they, won't they. It was a, is he going to sexually assault her? Which he does at the end, where he just grabs her. And like, at no point through this film have you really built up this romance to the point where that is a realistic option. So, I mean, the worst bit for me, jump ahead a little bit, on the night where they actually steal the Declaration of Independence, where he goes to the gala, when he meets her in the main gala room, and he just eye fucks her so intensely as he's drinking that champagne. I was like, I don't know if I can watch this anymore, because I found it deeply upsetting at that point. I think it was awful.
I thought a bit about that part. I thought how very role reversal it was, that the American guy was in the tux, and the English guy was the one in the scrubs, in a kind of James Bond role reversal.
It was a bit, actually. Yeah, that's a very good catch. That one is,
with Sean Bean being in Goldeneye again.
There was a couple of bits about that gala scene that really stood out for me. First of all, Nick Cage or Ben's reverse Saturday Night Fever suit with that massive collar, huge collar, open collar. I don't know about you guys. When I was 16, how many years ago we're talking? We're talking 14, 15 years ago. I used to get into nightclubs by making a fake ID and then laminating them, not massively dissimilar to how he gets into and robs the Declaration of Independence. If that's all it takes, I'm going to get the crown jewels, because all you need to do apparently is take a photo from a massive distance away on a camera that looks like a potato and stick that picture onto a picture of somebody else's pass. I mean, it's that easy, surely. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I just thought to myself, it just made me laugh so much.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the right size. It was a different size to the picture on the pass.
I'm pretty sure he went I'm pretty sure he said that'll do as well, as if like he's not.
Fuck it, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the technology they seem to use in parts, and when we come on to discuss Book of Secrets, the technology was far in advance of what we got now. They're zooming in, and somehow by zooming in, the picture gets 50 times better. It looks better than actual human eyesight. Made no sense again, just no sense. The whole thing. So from there, we get so they steal the Declaration of Independence. They go outside. They figure out that Sean Bean's after them. They kidnap Diane Kruger, go to John Voight's house, where they try to figure out the map. They figure out the map by rubbing lemon on it. Like, they have a massive argument about who should rub the lemon on it, and she's like, "Well, I work for the interior, whoever they are, so I'm the one who knows all the science about these things." Like, you know the science, but you're using a fucking grocery store lemon. How on earth have you made this argument to get to this point?
On a piece of paper that's hundreds and hundreds of years old, that are in reality probably flake in your hands.
Oh yeah, it would have destroyed it. The acid in the lemon would have destroyed it without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, I mean, you're missing one crucial component there, Andy, mate. It's not just lemon; it's incredibly hot breath. we need more heat. So instead of, I don't know, they eventually get to it. Instead of, maybe a hair dryer, or we'll get it near the tumble dryer. No, we'll get in really close, and we'll just breathe all over it. It's just like, it felt so awkward. I know they were trying to obviously highlight the romantic element of it and that, but it just, like, my notes, all I have summed up is hot breath. Like, how hot could their breath have been?
I just had that whole scene of John Voight being incredibly confused again.
Yeah.
Mm.
He looked like he was going to collapse. He looked that frail. And he was stumbling around the place, and he was arguing with him about something, and that he doesn't believe it all. He's been burnt by the whole scheme in the past, when it was his journey and whatever. But he just looked like he just looked like he was in the wrong place.
Yeah, I mean, we're led to believe that the Gates family are generations of puzzle solvers. They're all genius. But not for 1 second do I think that John Voight wasn't just some doddering old twat just stumbling around the place. In both films, this was as well. He just seemed to just walk places, and I'll end up in the right place eventually. It's fine. Yeah, not a good look for John Voight, I didn't think, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, so they managed to get the numbers off the back of this and figured out that they needed a letter. I don't know how they figured out that they needed this one specific letter that apparently had been in the Gates family for generations upon generations. And it's a very important note, or whatever it was supposed to be. Again, confused. But it was so important that it ends up in a museum. But at no point did John Voight decide to tell his son, "Oh, that letter, yeah, I've donated it to the museum." He had to find out there after what I presume is hundreds of years or generations of the family. It was such a logic leap that we're just supposed to buy into and say, "Oh, yes, fine, carry on."
We should have put a disclaimer at the start that if you want to watch this, just stop thinking about things and just go on for the ride, because there's leaps of faith all over the place that make no sense whatsoever. And there was a thing about it was about this point where I thought, this film just reminds me of the Uncharted games. I know that they came later, so it's about we know where the influence is from. But you got a main guy who's relatively youngish. You got a woman who's in this case not a reporter like Elena is in Uncharted. You got the old guy who's gone through it quite a bit, who's some kind of an assistant, and then in later games you've got the young assistant as well. So I thought, in the Uncharted games, you take it for being a game and you expect it to be stupid, and it's based exactly off these films.
Yeah, I've got in my notes, it's like a really shit version of Tomb Raider.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, to be honest. Yeah. So from that point on, we then go to this museum where this important letter is stored, where Riley decides to send in this little kid, just keep sending him back and forth to keep giving him 4 numbers at a time to try and find these letters to make a word. And then he gets all of that, and then he managed to figure it out with the very last word of it all. And then when Sean Bean rocks up and sees one word of the whole thing, he then manages to figure out the whole clue.
Of course.
Just like the stupidity astounds me at times with that movie.
And why couldn't the kid memorize more than 4 numbers?
He gave him a piece of paper, so he could have written it fucking down.
maybe he was being security conscious, just in case.
Maybe,
He,
yeah.
he was a hustler. He needed more than it was $1 per trip, wasn't it? I think
Yes,
so.
yes, it was.
Why work for free or for $1 when you can make 5 or 6 or 7? You know what I mean? That's a bit logical.
The kid's the only one with the brain in this film.
Exactly. I mean, talking about some of you mentioned about like important historical documents throughout the film. I did find over the first and second film that Cage's patrioticness felt awkward, and maybe that's just because we're not American. I don't know, but I found it really cheesy and cliched and didn't add anything for me at all. Like it didn't mean anything to me, so I don't know why I should expect that it should mean anything to the characters. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how you guys felt about it. You know, it did an okay job of being not too Americana, but it was a little much. It was a little too forced for me.
I think because of the Americans that we know, and Steve, Todd, Nate, everyone else, Blake, none of them seem to be like this. That I think you got to kind of, we're just not used to it. But I have spoke to people in the past who are full on like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that they're American EDL or anything like that, but they are all for the flag, and it's all for one for all. It's all America or nothing. So for me, it wasn't so much of a out of context thing. I just didn't think he just brought it over very well.
I think part of what it was is a lot of the big crescendo isn't the word I want to use, but the big rousing elements of the film is when he's reading out certain either like lines from the Declaration of Independence or other big sayings in American, and I think they said throughout the film a few times, you know, people don't talk like that anymore. Well, they don't, because it sounds fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I think because of maybe, you know, that we're English and we don't talk like that over here, it just felt a little, it just didn't feel natural. It didn't flow very well. But I'm sure, you know, there are Americans that, you know, that are into their history, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and they probably got a kick out of it, but it just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, which, I mean, and that's a good point to mention the fact that he's named after a very important historical figure, Benjamin Franklin Gates, the surname. I don't really know who Benjamin Franklin was. I know I think he signed the Declaration, but again, to the English, it doesn't really mean a massive amount. But I would have thought that name would have played a role in something afterwards, but it didn't really. It was almost like we've called him that because, and that was the reason, just because. It seemed quite strange, really, that they plucked that in there. But well, I've looked at some of Cage's other roles, and I do wonder if this might be something that Nick Cage likes. So if you look at some of the films that he did, so for example, he was Stanley Goodspeed in The Rock. Obviously, that film is about having to run through the rock, and it's a derivation of Godspeed, which they mention in the film itself. So it's got that sort of connotation to it. In Drive Angry, he plays a character called Milton. John Milton was obviously the writer of the poem Paradise Lost, which is very, very loosely translated into this movie, into the deals with the devil. You've got Castor Troy. Castor and Pollux were the twins in Greek mythology. They're in Face Off. So I do wonder if Nicolas Cage has got this hard on about having names that have got some really tenuous link to the rest of the film. It just seemed really weird that they made such a point of making us know that he was called Benjamin Franklin, and then it never played any role in the rest of the film.
When did this thing start?
When did what, sorry?
When did all this naming stuff start? Have you looked through all of them, or is this just a select few you found?
These were a few that are off the top of my head. I haven't been through all of them. So I mean, like you've got Cameron Poe, obviously, that Con Air, that might be the earliest one I can find. So Con Air was what, 94 maybe, yeah. And that was named after a poet. There might be earlier ones, but they were the ones that sprang to my mind. So
it's too much of a coincidence to be just a coincidence then. If it is just a trope.
Maybe someone listening can enlighten us on it, because there's bound to be more. There's bound to be more, isn't there? To be fair, It seems like too much of a coincidence, like Stu says, for sure. But on the topic of kind of the Americana side of things, it's interesting that as English and it being the Declaration of Independence and the Civil War, maybe I'm being unconsciously biased about the Americana in the film. Maybe we'll get told otherwise by some of our friends across the pond how some of these things are probably more important than we realise, and it might actually have been portrayed really well. The heist, on the other hand, not portrayed. The Ocean's 11 heist. I mean, we talk about this film, and it's so much easier to be funny and slate something than it is to be say how good something is sometimes. And I actually really enjoyed the film, and we'll probably get on to discuss that at the end. But the heist, my God, it's just you know, when we've got Harvey Keitel's character, where he's talking about going through and somebody's got to go to jail, and who's the shooter, who's shooting. It was paint by numbers, isn't it? Incredibly paint by numbers. We're assuming the heist will happen. We're assuming it's going to go well. We assume then something's going to go wrong, and it doesn't ask a lot of questions that we have to think about. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a popcorn film. But the heist, I mean, I don't know what you guys thought about it. What were your thoughts on it? How do you think it looked? How do you think, it kind of felt to watch?
I thought it was very convenient that it had to go into its special cleaning room to be touched, just for one sensor to be off, for it then to be completely dismantled into a room where you think, okay, why is this room not as secure as everywhere else in this whole building?
Yes.
But the thing that stuck out to me is how expensive is a replica poster of the Declaration?
$35, I think it was, wasn't it?
$35 in 2000. When you think, you wouldn't get posters for that now.
That is a dear do. But yeah, I agree with Stu there. It was very convenient. There was a lot of ex machina. It was all very fortunate that it went here and that this happened. And only one little thing had to be out of place and the whole thing would have come crumbling down. And I really struggle with films like that where it's just based upon pure dumb luck. And that's what it was for large swathes of it, I felt. It was just dumb luck that got them through to it.
And English brutality through the wall the other way.
Yeah.
Which, again, no one even realised was happening in one of the most secure buildings ever. That they can just hammer through and just smash things up. No one heard a thing.
But how did Sean Bean know that the Declaration was going to be in that room? Because normally it would go down into the vaults. They showed us that at the start, didn't they? That it goes down into the vaults and elsewhere. Yeah. But if the sensors get sent off, they take it somewhere else to check it. How did Sean Bean not? He surely should have just assumed it would be in the vault, not up in the cleaning room.
Didn't he steal the video feed off Riley, and he would have saw it was there?
No, because he thought they were dead when they were in the Charlotte. He didn't know they escaped the Charlotte, did he?
Oh,
at that point?
Yeah, of course, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
It's just a massive plot hole.
It just doesn't make sense.
Don't ruin the film for me.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Unless there was another part of it where they were going to be in there and then they were going to find someone to activate the sensor in the upstairs. Who knows? Maybe
there was an inside man.
Yeah.
Maybe that will be the plot of National Treasure 3. So yeah. Anyway, got a bit off track. Went back a bit. So yeah, we figured out that they had to go to the Liberty Bell next, and they figured out that the shadow had to be cast at 2:00 because it was on some bill. But surely, even with my limited knowledge of astrophysics, the sun isn't in the same position every day at 2:00. It would change every day. How did they just happen to be there on the one day that the sun was out and that it shone on that one particular brick? Again, just a logic leap that is just implausible if you think about it for more than 3 seconds.
Yeah, that was the only one out of the whole thing where even with me and my silly brain just stood out as that's just stupid. If you could have said, oh, it's somewhere in this brick pile, or it's a vague place, and you had to work something out from there, that'd make some kind of sense. But to be that perfect on that brick,
Yeah. Yeah.
It was for me. It was by that point in the film, I was starting to get a little irritated at the lack of payoff. It very much felt like clue after clue after clue after clue after clue throughout the whole film till the payoff at the end. And at this point, I thought to myself, I was just like, please get on with it. Please get on with it. It felt a little to me. Like I say, I enjoyed the film, but it could have shaved off quite a bit for me in terms of, we're quite happy, as you've mentioned earlier, to have these big gaping plot holes. So I don't think we needed to drag it out quite as long as we did. And when he carved that brick out, it's just. I know. Listen, I know me and Andy especially. We're massively into pro wrestling, so suspension of disbelief isn't necessarily something that we struggle with. But yeah, come on, let's play the game.
Yeah.
And I know I mean, is this a kids' film though? I mean, are we thinking about it too much? Is this, are we thinking about it in actually we should be expecting a child just to enjoy it and enjoy it for what it is, or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy films like this from a child's mind, even though I'm 36 years old. So even regardless of the silliness, I know we'll come on to liking it later, but it don't bother me one bit. It was only when the way I do things, I mean, I'll think of something and I'll put a time code and then I'll look it up later rather than right now it's all the way through a film. That's just how I always did it. But for me, that was the only thing that I noticed. I thought, well, okay, fine. And then just carried on watching it. It didn't affect my enjoyment of it whatsoever. It was just the thing that glaringly stood out was just plain stupid.
I think for me, this was the point where my interest just dipped massively at this point. It was too much. I mean, the other things you can sort of explain away, but this one it made no sense. And I thought we're probably about 90 minutes into the film here at this point as well. And if this whole film was 90 minutes, I'd probably have enjoyed it. But the fact that it was 2 hours 10, it was too long. And apparently on the director's commentary, John Turteltaub did say that the original cut of the film was 4 hours.
Oh, finally.
4 hours of that, could you imagine? So, I mean, there was a lot of flab on this film that could have been cut out, and stuff like that is definitely some of it. Like Matt just said about it being asking question after question without any payoff, it felt very much like Lost. And I gave up on that after 3 seasons because there was no payoff, and you need payoff more than just that one at the very end. So by this point, I really struggled for the last sort of 40 odd minutes of this movie.
Yeah, I completely get where you're coming from there. I mean, Lost for me was like an abusive partner that I keep going back to because it never gave me what I wanted, but I couldn't. I'd committed to it. I'd committed for better or worse, but I know exactly what you mean. It was just. Don't get me wrong. If it was a 90-minute film, like you said, I think you'd have forgiven some of the more far-fetched elements because you get your ending and so be it. But it's one of those. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed it nonetheless.
Yeah. So from that point, he ends up getting caught by the police, and then they somehow decide, oh yeah, it's fine. We'll just let you go and sort this out. Don't know how that works, but. Yeah, that's another thing. But so then we go into the catacombs where they get left by Sean Bean, only to find out that really the treasure was there all along. That scene in the catacombs where they were on the pulleys, the pulley elevators, that went on far too long for my enjoyment. I fell asleep during that scene. I had to rewind it twice. I had to do it twice because I fell asleep both times. It dragged. I wanted something a bit punchier, especially as we knew the ball was rolling at this point and we get into the end, and it just didn't happen. It was a bit of a wet fart, really, for me. And yeah,
it's like they'd spent the money on the effects and the stunts and stuff, and they had to put it all in. That's it.
Yeah,
that the pulley scene in the second one, that the equivalent scene was much better.
Yeah,
it was again straight off. But it did. It was like, oh, you fell down that one. Oh, okay, we'll get up. Oh, you fell down again. Someone else has fell off. And it did kind of. We've built it, so we'll damn use it. And and they just put it all in. But yeah, it could have lasted 4 minutes. That whole thing.
It felt like 40.
All I know, I was put off by the constant use of the word, well, status in that case, but status quo, because all I could think of was rocking all over the world. But there we go. But the whole way through, you mentioned obviously the ball's rolling, and we get to the final scene. Sorry if I stole your thunder there, Andy, but one of the big plus points, I thought the actual payoff and reveal of the treasure was excellent. I really thought it was a really nice shot. I think it looked excellent. I really like one at the very start of when they did the kind of montage of the different civilizations collecting the treasure. I actually really liked that. I thought it was a nice touch, and then seeing the different treasure of different time periods, I thought was a nice touch. And I actually thought that was one of the better elements of the film, certainly from like a cinematography point of view and kind of the content of it. I really enjoyed
definitely.
it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I thought that was, like you said, the reveal was very good. The way the flame sort of rolled out, and you thought, oh, is that it? And then you realise, oh shit, it's this huge cavern. Yeah, I thought that was superb. Again, that's something I would praise the film for. But going back just a minute before that, when Sean Bean left them to die effectively, or so he thought, when they came up with that random riddle for him, we have seen throughout this film that Sean Bean is a genius. Why would he just believe any old crap that John Voight, of all people, tells him? Someone who we've kind of established at this point is just a bit of a moron. Yeah, that bugged me as well.
Maybe just because it sounded as ludicrous as the rest of the film.
Yeah, maybe.
And you think, okay, and they picked Boston being, the Tea Party and all the English and all that kind of stuff, being old, and that would make some kind of logical sense. If there was a city to pick, you'd say Boston. So maybe that's why he believed it.
Yeah,
and maybe
that's probably it.
At that point, he was balancing on a wooden winch as well. So being told a lot of lies by a stuttering, doddering old man. Well, why not?
Yeah, maybe he just thought, fuck it, I want to get out of here. So from that point, obviously, they find the treasure. They manage to escape the catacombs. They end up back in police custody. And even though they still stole the artifact, the police decide, it's okay, you can go. We know you stole it for a good reason. I don't think that's how the law actually works. I think if you stole something, you generally go to jail for it.
Someone's got to go to jail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Unless you get a pass, if it involves essential fines that come from it. But that was another thing. Where did the poster holder come from? He just seemed to appear.
Yeah.
There's no one that should they have that hidden in a dress. He didn't have it hidden in his waistcoat or his jacket. So for 1 minute it was just stuffed, a bit of 200, 300-year-old paper stuffed in his inside his jacket, and then next thing, he's unless you got it from the gift shop. Maybe that's why it cost $35. Is you got a tube holder as well?
Maybe.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah. So that was National Treasure. So a couple of questions to answer on National Treasure. Question 1. Matt, did you enjoy this film?
Yeah, I enjoyed the film. I very much tried to view it at first, at least, as enjoy it for what it is, Disney film, not think too much into it. Then, naturally, what I do kicked in, and I started to pick holes at it, and then started to see some of the more ludicrous things that were going on. But you know what? As a popcorn film, I quite enjoyed it. I gave it a 7 out of 10, which is more or less where IMDb has it. I enjoyed it. Would I watch it again in a hurry? Probably not. But for what it was, it certainly passed 2 hours. I've certainly spent worse 2 hours watching films.
That's fair. Stu, did you enjoy this film?
there's that look then where you know what the answer's going to be. But yeah, I mean, because I couldn't really remember it that well, so I was watching it again for practically the first time. And when I realised, okay, so I thought I didn't know it was a Disney film. I had no idea. But as soon as the silliness started, I thought, okay, I'm not gonna concentrate too much on this. I'm just gonna enjoy the ride, and I thoroughly enjoyed the ride. Yeah, it's ridiculous and silly and nothing makes sense, but I think it knows that it is. And yeah, I think 7.5, 7.5 is probably a fair score, and I'll probably give it the same thing. And talking about it now, even though I only watched it last week, I would go back and watch it again because I did enjoy it.
That's fair. My answer to the question would probably be no. Shock, I know.
Shock horror.
Yeah, for me, once we got to the end of it, I realised that it made the cardinal sin of I have no idea why we were hunting for treasure. After all of that, why were we doing that? And
That's fair.
like for a film that's that long, it needs to be a lot. It needs to be a bit more in depth. It needs to be a bit more believable. If it had been a 90-minute romp, I could have forgiven pretty much all of the dumb crap that happened in it. But because it was so long, it needed to have a little bit more of an air of legitimacy that it didn't have. I'd give it a 4. The film was cack, but I thought that we'll come on to Nick in a minute. But I thought Diane Kruger was good. I thought that the chap who played Riley, I can't remember his real name. I thought he was quite amusing in it. He was dumb, but he was funny. I did laugh at bits with John Voight, even though he was terrible. So it's not like a 1, but it's no more than a 4 for me. So the second question we ask for every film, based on this film and this film alone, is Nick Cage good or bad? Stu, do you want to start us on that?
I was surprised how bad he is in this, and I didn't expect that. And maybe it's because I was comparing it to other things like, I don't know, like the Uncharted games, like Tomb Raider, like you said, and things like Jewel of the Nile, adventure films of the past. But he just didn't seem to. I know he's supposed to be a treasure hunter, and you normally think treasure hunters have got a bit of charisma about them. He just seemed like it was found in for me. That was the amazing. The bad thing about it, that I thought he was bad in this.
Matt, good or bad?
Not off to a good start for Nicholas, but it's a no from me, unfortunately. There were some elements that I enjoyed, and like some of the things that we would probably associate with Nick Cage, some of the more quirky elements that do come through. But for me, it was just like Stu said, like a bit of a. I want my treasure hunters to be dark, brooding. Let's find out a little bit more about them. What's their dark secret? What's motivating them? And I just didn't really get that. It was a bit of felt like more of a bit of a midlife crisis than a treasure hunter. That's how it was just portrayed from him in his performance. But so for this one, unfortunately, it's a no.
You know what? I was thinking about exactly what we just said. That if you think of what we said last week about the Scorpion King, if Brendan Fraser had been in this film in that same role, he would have been 10 times better than Nicolas Cage was.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, mate. It's a very good observation.
I mean, my answer to the question, it's no, but I did think he made some interesting character choices. He was very, very creepy towards Diane Kruger. I'm not saying that's a good thing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a character choice that I don't think many actors would have made. It's very unique to Nick Cage to do something you wouldn't expect, but a lot of the rest of and I think it was a problem with the film as much as it was with Nick Cage, is that it just sort of happened and he was there.
I agree. I agree with you.
Right, so that was National Treasure, and we're going to talk about National Treasure Book of Secrets next.
Hello. Been drinking, have we?
Just a nip. Just pop down to the pub for a pint. Bit of all right. Going to arrest the man for that? Going to detain a blighter for enjoying his whiskey?
Okay, so once again, we start off with a massive exposition dump at the start of Book of Secrets. Another sort of 20 minutes of, here's all the information you're going to need for the next 2 hours of your life. It was very wibble wobble, bibble bobble, is what I've written down here, because it was just a lot of noise. The one thing I did like about it is that it was show and not tell. it was better than in the first film where it was just Christopher Plummer talking at you. At least they set the scene and gave you a bit of an idea of what was going on. So I did like that. I thought that was a good start to the film.
Yeah, I'd agree. I liked in a strange way how I disliked at the start of the first film how we're immediately into the plot of the film. We're immediately at the go. There's not a lot of preamble, and we're straight away into it. And whilst I still don't really understand the slurring of the Gates name and all of that element to it, I think it was a good start to kick us off. We already were warmed up because we know how this is going to work from the previous film, but I thought it was a decent start, and I enjoyed show not tell was pretty much spot on with how to describe it.
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up, but how it seemed to me like you could have, well, I presume some maniacs will do this and just watch them back to back, and you could watch it back to back and it'll be absolutely fine. And
no, it wouldn't.
Yes, it would. But no, it was just back in the rhythm. It was back in the rhythm, and it's like, oh, you've never been away. And how many years was there between the films?
3. It was 2004 and 2007.
Yeah, so for a 3-year gap when you could think, okay, it was the period that they were together, and we'll come to that in a minute, but the period that they've been as a couple, you could have watched that a year later and think, okay, fine, back in the world. And
it very much doesn't miss a beat, does it?
It seemed, I think the thing with the whole thing for me, it was a lot more polished.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. So from the exposition dump, we then go to what I presume is a lecture of some sort, and we see Ed Harris. And immediately, much like in the first film, you know, you're going to be the bad guy, aren't you? Because it's Ed Harris, and he's always the bad guy.
Well, we will get onto this later on, but I think it does a really good job with its villains. The 2 films. I know we'll talk about it a little, but I think he's believable as a bad guy. He's real kind of, stoic isn't the right word I want to use, but his cold and calculated way of speaking and his motives. When he talks about his great granddaddy and his from the deep south elements there. I think he's quite a convincing bad guy. And what they do with him later on into the film, I really, really enjoyed. But you do know straight away. Well, Stu, you tell me. Do you know he's a wrong 'un? Is he a rotter to you?
Well, he was lurking at the back of the lecture theatre in the dark on his own, so I thought that this can't be the behaviour of someone who's of sane mind.
Well, that's my entire film studies degree, mate. So.
A lot of mine, especially for the some of the worst films that we were subjected to with that kind of thing. I had a Game Boy Advance at the time, and it got confiscated. How can you get things confiscated at uni where you pay to be there? If you're not going to pay attention, then you can't pay attention to your machine. That's what I said, playing X versus Sever, but that's a different story altogether. But yeah, I thought because of how the first film went, I just presumed that he was going to be the bad one. And it was the same old thing. Every single time I see him, I think, was he the guy who's in RoboCop 3? And it never is, because that guy's never been seen again. But it's like an automatic thing with Ed. Even in Westworld, when I saw him at first in Westworld, I thought, was he RoboCop 3? No, he wasn't.
He was excellent in Westworld, to be fair. I think that's where my my high praise was from Westworld, to be fair.
But he plays the villain in Con Air as well.
Yeah.
Another Nick Cage film I cannot wait for us to get to.
Oh, yes.
He's also the villain in History of Violence. Good movie, well worth your time. And he's in Mother, if I remember correctly, the Darren Aronofsky film. And he plays a bit of a rungun in that. So he's just got the history of being a bit of a shit. But he's absolutely brilliant at it. It's his niche almost.
Yeah, it is.
You do believe him whenever you see him do something heinous. So
like,
I'll watch anything with him. He's great.
He's like Glenn Morshower, being a military man in every film that he's in.
Yeah.
Glenn Morshower of 24 and Transformers fame.
Yeah. He's just got that face that he's just automatically, oh yeah, you're in the military.
For anybody on a Transformers count, that's 3. The klaxon for 3 has gone off from Stu there.
So yeah, from this point we find out that apparently Ben Gates' great granddaddy was apparently involved in the Lincoln assassination. We know that he wasn't because we saw the exposition dump at the beginning. I personally would have liked to have maybe not had that, maybe have just thought he could have been a bad guy.
Yeah.
Rather than just tell us outright he's not and he's going to prove it. I'd rather have had that air of mystery to it.
Yeah,
that's the whole Disney thing, though. Let's just get it out the way that he is good and he is bad.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. It's
very binary, isn't it?
Yeah. They didn't want to leave anything to chance, almost.
Yeah, it's no Usual Suspects.
No, definitely not. But we go from that scene to one of my favourite scenes in the film, where Riley's doing his book signing, and then those stunning Chicago, was he in Chicago? I can't remember, but those stunning women come up and ask him, "Oh, aren't you Ben Gates, the person who found that treasure?" Like, seriously, can anybody name me a famous treasure hunter? Like, from any point in history, like, treasure hunters aren't that famous.
Annika Rice.
No. Annika Rice, yeah. That's a very niche comment. But they're just not that famous, but apparently every hot woman in America knows who this famous treasure hunter is. So that really tickled me. And then when he gets his car towed away and you just see him chase after it, that was one of my favourite scenes in this film because it was just insane.
He was weird without a beard, though. I will say that.
He did look like a child, didn't he?
At first, I thought, is it the same guy?
Yeah, same. Even though I'd only seen the film like 24 hours earlier.
No,
So-
I've never seen. Have you ever been to one of them events though, where book signings?
Yeah, I've done it with like football and the odd like Comic Cons and stuff where I've met people.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, in our world of things like this, you expect it, but saying about treasure hunters, there's bound to be people who that's their thing. Where
Yeah, but these were just women passing by who just happened to be in a bookstore. They weren't queuing to meet him.
or they're playing it cool though.
Maybe.
So that's what you got to think. You got to think of all these people who go to the caravan show at the NEC. They pretend that they just turn up there, but in fact they look forward to it all year round. But some of them are hot as well.
That's quite the comment there, Stu.
That's the soundbite.
So from the book signing, we find out that Ben and Abby have split up, and he doesn't understand why they've split up. He then breaks into her house. That might be a bit of a clue. Plus all the creepy shit he did in the first film anyway was a little bit wrong. So yeah, he breaks into the house to get these letters. Obviously she comes back. So they break in, they get these letters and then figure out, yes, we need to go to France now. Don't know how they made that logic leap. Again, it was more of the Jeff Goldblum in South Park stuff that they just decided, France is where we need to be to see the Statue of Liberty. Whilst then, they've got the drone, which has also got one of those magic cameras where it zooms in and gets super clear, even though it's like 100 yards away from the thing. Again, technology just it screams that it's just not quite working like it should be for me at this point.
Could have got it off Wish. might have been, make some bold claims, isn't it?
That's very true.
And the very questionable French accents of the French police as well.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, like, because the one of them looked like...
I've seen him before.
He looked like Buster Bluth, if you've ever watched Arrested.
Yes,
I don't know if it was him, but he did look a lot like him.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, that accent was not French.
No.
Mm. So yeah, sorry, Stu, carry on.
So, did you know that there was another Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, it's...
I did.
Yeah. I've never seen it or anything, but I have heard that there is, because I think the one in America is from France, and her sister is still in France.
Yeah, obviously that one was made in France, but I've never seen that other one ever in anything.
I've never seen it in anything. I've heard the story more so than actually seen anything about it.
No, I thought it was a prototype that was about like man size. I thought it was just in a park somewhere, but not not like that one.
Oh no, a giant, yeah, and that's why they needed the super drone to get it.
Exactly. Isn't it a nice history lesson?
Mm. So yeah, they get the message off there, and then immediately realise, oh no, we need to be now in England. And then a few seconds later, they're at Buckingham Palace with probably the first time that we've seen proper crazy Cage is when he's in Buckingham Palace. This is the first time that you see Cage in his natural habitat of just being off the wall mental. That is one of my again, another one of the best bits of this film is where he just loses his shit with the quote of bangers and mash, bubbles and squeak, smoked steel pipe, haggis.
Yes.
Yeah, loved it.
It was the outburst that we needed. Was it improv? I wonder if, I don't know. Do you think it was improv? Do you reckon he would have been able to come out with these English or British things off the top of his head? I don't know. Is he known as an ad-libber?
It just seemed really, really random to just how it came out. I thought, either that's actually really, really good acting, or it is improv. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably the best bit of acting he has actually done in the two films for me. I thought he was superb. Just this, you actually believed he was unhinged at this moment. And I know he was putting it on because he was supposed to put on a show for it. I'm not sure if it would have been in the script or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was given a bit of free rein because he is Nicolas Cage after all. And if you want someone to be a bit crazy, who better?
Yeah, I thought that was what, especially because we were doing this for this podcast, that was what I was craving, that little bit of outburst. I was really wanting that in the first film that never really came. And then when it came in this film, I thought, right, we're off to the races now. This is the Nick Cage I want to see. This is the lunatic, to steal a quote from Mission, the lunatic fringe that we're expecting here. And I thought it came off really well, really. And you're right, Stu, and I think it came off so natural. It felt real. It felt it's just come completely from out the blue. It might either be an ad lib or just kind of going with the flow. No, I think it went really well.
From this part, we find out that Harvey Keitel has been brought back into the film for some reason. He doesn't really do much. He barely leaves his desk for pretty much the majority of the film, but he is back. And I have a quote here from, or not an exact quote, but he did say about Ed Harris's character. He claims that he's had these papers for 140 years. Why is he only now bringing them forward? And I thought, yeah, that's exactly it. You have ruined the rest of this film because why has he done that? There's no plausible reason for it to be now. Why wasn't it 20 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever? Yeah, it was stupid. So yeah, I thought Harvey Keitel, you're on my team, mate. I'll get you.
Harvey Keitel's almost always great anyway, regardless of where he is.
Yeah, he's good in a film that was remade with a Nick Cage film. He's good in Bad Lieutenant.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to doing that. Slight sidebar. I can't be the only one here that thought to myself, I'd love to take a dump at Buckingham Palace when they went to the toilets.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, God, that's got to be on the bucket list, isn't it? I mean, who wouldn't want to?
Literally.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got that chance. You take it, mate. 100%.
How did Riley get all of that Apple gear into? There was just shitloads of adverts for Apple all the way throughout this. That needs to be mentioned. That was egregious. But how did you manage to sneak all of that crap into Buckingham Palace?
Maybe it's in the magic jackets, like the decoration holder from the first one.
That's just all tin-foiled suits that he's wearing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they get arrested in Buckingham Palace and immediately escape. It's like the easiest place in the world to escape from. So it's good to know that the Queen's safe and everything, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's easy to break in and out, a la Dads for Justice about how many years ago when he met the guy.
Yeah. And he scaled the building.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so obviously they crack the code that's in some, I can't even remember the name of that, the bureau, the desk that they were getting it from. They find a slab of wood.
The
That was
Resolute.
it. The Resolute, yeah. Then there's a car chase through London, and I've just got written down here, LOL. Like, have you ever been to London? There is no fucking way on earth you were going to have any car chases. You would struggle to have a foot chase through London. It is that crowded. You're not going to have a car chase.
Well, that's what I had. I had the car chase written down as well, just for amazingly how empty it was. But saying that, it was quite well done for a car chase in a very small space, and the streets they had to work with, which they could have obviously chose better streets than them, which they're not around Buckingham Palace, just if anyone's been there. But I thought it was not bad, the whole car chase scene.
It did look good.
Again, leap of faith that this isn't actual London.
Yeah. So yeah, we go through there, and then all of a sudden, yep, Helen Mirren. I was pleased with that. Shame about the accent. It was a bit.
Yeah, that was disappointing for me. Really, I was hoping. Well, I mean, she wouldn't have been British, which is fine, but it was a sticking point for me throughout the whole thing. I was like, please, Helen, be normal, Helen Mirren, please. It just it was a bit. It took it away from me, but it was nice, you know. It was a name that I probably wasn't expecting to see, you know. So it's one of those.
But I think with that kind of thing, it is because we know her accent, what her actual accent is so well, that any time it's something different, it takes you out of it straight away.
Maybe.
Well,
but
it's not.
For me, it was just a generic American. It wasn't like, oh, that's New York or that's Bostonian. It was just quote unquote American.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because last week we talked about Peg, and I get really put off when he's not in a British accent, like, well, his natural accent. It really takes away from Simon Pegg when he's in you know, either in American accents or anything else. Like, accents for me, when it comes to when they're not usual or what I'm used to, really threw me off. I don't know. I know obviously you're probably a much bigger fan than I am, Andy, but yeah, it's a weird one for me.
Yeah, I can excuse Simon Pegg for anything, to be honest. He's always great in everything. But yeah, it was a bit jarring coming from our Helen. Just doesn't sound right, does it? It's a bit weird.
He's a British institution, and keep it that way.
But she's the fucking Queen, for crying out loud. She deserves better. I'm sure I read that she was supposed to be meeting the Queen, but she couldn't do it because she was filming National Treasure Book of Secrets.
What an excuse.
So from there, they then figure out that they need to go to the other desk, which is in the White House. So again, a few seconds later, we're off to the White House in Washington. That kid at the White House who went up to Ben, who was mouthing off about his granddad killing Abraham Lincoln, I would have kicked that kid in the balls. He was an absolute little horror.
Yeah, he was.
I would not have put up with that shit if I was Ben Gates.
I think that the exchange though between Nick Cage as he portrayed it was actually quite entertaining. I thought it was a nice touch in the way that Nick or Ben Gates is so passionate about what he does that he'll argue with a little kid about it, and I thought that was actually a bit of character development that I didn't expect. I thought it was quite funny and entertaining, and another side of the slightly unhinged version of Ben Gates in this film that we didn't see in the first one. So I actually enjoyed. I thought it was quite. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I thought it was quite a good little exchange.
And you'd imagine people who are like that will argue their point about their point against absolutely anyone, regardless of how old they are or anything else. That if they know they're right, they will say they're right.
Yeah. The next note I've got after kicking the kid in the balls, we were an hour into this film, halfway through, and finally we get to the fucking point of it all. They broke into the Oval Office. They managed to find out that the slab of wood that they needed wasn't there, and what was in its place was the seal of the Book of Secrets, which is a book that the presidents would write down the secrets of the nation for the next president, for the next guy, and for the next guy. My first thought was I can just imagine what Donald Trump will be leaving for the next guy. The next thing I've got is, why is Harvey Keitel in this movie?
Again.
Just I've got it like 3 times throughout my notes. I just don't understand why he's here. That couldn't just have been another generic cop. Such a waste of such a talented actor, I thought that one. But then again, I'll say the same about Helen Mirren. Such a waste of such a talent. So then they go on to kidnap the president. And for some reason, the president doesn't say to him, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll just tell him the door locked behind us. There won't be a problem. You crack on and do what you need to do." He tells him, "Well, you've got to do it, because otherwise you're going to be in deep shit." Like, you're the president. You can just tell them, leave him. It's fine.
Yeah, or just pardon him. That was the only bit in this one where I thought that's just stupid. And I think that should be a thing there. That's just stupid moment of these films where as soon as it did stand behind him, and you think, okay, explain yourself.
Yeah.
And he actually tells him, and then he tells him where to go and get the book from. You think, okay, he's got to pardon him now.
Yeah.
And when you suddenly they come out of the rusty gate that's always been there, that's amazingly never been discovered before. That gate almost seemed like, remember the 66 Batman series?
Yeah.
Where the Batcave was just hidden under some bush.
Yeah.
And no one seemed to realise it was there. That's what that gate seemed like to me, where it was rusted for effect, but it was just under a bush, which you could have just lifted up and just walked through at any time. Another leap of faith, but oh well.
Yeah. Again, the next note I've got, why is Harvey Keitel in this movie? Just a pure payday. That's the only reason he could have done it, surely. So we go from there, we go and try and find the book in the library, and then on to Mount Rushmore. I'm sort of racing through it a little bit, but to be honest, not a lot really happens in these scenes. It's just sort of boom, 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 on to the next. But it somehow still manages to drag a little bit. It's still a 2-hour film that we seem to get a lot of just pap happening in between.
I know what you say. I think I had the benefit of watching this over 2 parts, over 2 evenings. So what my one major complaint of the first film was it very much felt clue after clue after clue after clue. The bam 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 thank you ma'am element of this was a bit more forgiving for me. Like we've done this, bang, we're away. It didn't drag as much. It had its massive questionable plot holes and it had its things like that, but it flowed for me a little better than the first. When we get to Mount Rushmore after the library, again it's painted by numbers. It's very much. We're not going to give you the chance to figure it out. You're going to be told, and we're just going to go with it. But it flowed a little better for me than the first one.
And there was bits in this one as well when you get to Mount Rushmore and you get the eagle in the rock. I thought that was actually really clever. Which I didn't expect that at all.
That did look quite good. I liked that little the way they'd got it hidden, but it was hidden in plain sight sort of thing. I did think for a minute, has it never rained at Mount Rushmore before? That was clever, without sort of insulting our intelligence. We never sort of made to feel stupid for not getting that leap. But I allowed my suspension of disbelief to go a little bit with that. So we're inside Mount Rushmore now, and this, similar to the first film, is where I started to lose it a little bit. It slowed down too much here, like the scene where they were on the levees in the elevators in the first film. Nothing much really happened, but they still managed to drag it out for a day and a half.
I thought this one was better from that point of view, especially when they go onto the balance board. I thought that was really good. I thought that was really well done. But again, when there was no need to cut back to doddering old John Voight again, that could have been okay. Yeah, they're still trying to find a way out. Cut back again straight off, but it seems to just linger on them two for no reason. As we haven't even mentioned that they were supposed to have been a couple. It
was kind of irrelevant to the rest of the film, though. It just wasn't it?
They hated each other that much for nearly 20 odd years or whatever it was, that they couldn't stand to be in the same room. And then again, that was the budding romance of this film. Like
But it was less creepy than Nick Cage and Abby in the first one.
Well, it depends on your
Yeah,
old people.
True.
I tell you something though. In that scene that you mentioned with the balance board, whether they meant to or not, my arse absolutely fell out my hands when the ladder broke. Because the thing is, it's coming. It's a proper cliche, but like I don't know why.
It happened in the first film.
Well, yeah, exactly. But maybe it's a fear of heights. Maybe it's what I think it is. One of the scariest films I've ever seen was The Descent. And maybe there's just an element of that in it. I don't know, but my heart really went through my chest. And it's a Disney film. What the hell's going on? I shouldn't feel this way. Ridiculous.
One thing I did think when they were on that balance board, and that they decided to roll off that huge golden statue, I thought that wouldn't just roll down it, that would hit the balance board and tip it up. So Nick Cage would immediately be fucked. But no, obviously because it's Disney, it worked perfectly and it rolled down and he was able to run up as it was tipping up the wrong way. I did think that was really well done.
I thought we were going for a total wipeout. They were going to be ejected, like on the other side, but sadly it didn't go that way.
Maybe that statue was hollow, and that's why it was hidden in a cave. That it was a knockoff. Again, a Wish from Wish.
Yeah, exactly.
So from this point, we then end up again in that massive cavernous room. They do again exactly the same as they did in the first film, where they light up the walkway. Except the walkway on this one is like 2 meters long, and there's natural light coming into the cavern, so they didn't need to light it up at all. That was just weird. It looked so strange when they did that. But I think that comes to the point that I was going to make about how actually this film was almost beat for beat the same as the first film. You had the exposition dump, you had the bad guy show his true colours early doors, you had a few puzzles to get through. They eventually end up where they need to be.
You had the kid.
Yeah, everything was just beat for beat. That's the same as the first film.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing, though. I mean, Force Awakens is the same as A New Hope.
True.
Pretty much. I mean, I know they're not direct sequels, obviously, but when you look at there's a lot of sequels that are beat for beat. But it was just enough of a difference for me to just for it not to be obvious, if you know what I mean. Whereas you think, okay, this is the structure of these National Treasure films, and if there was a third and fourth, it'd probably been exactly the same. But I just took it as a structure rather than just a reimagining. It was an issue for me.
Yeah, I think what they did with Ed Harris's character, not necessarily a redemption, because he's nowhere near as much as a shithouse as Sean Bean's character was. I think that was a nice touch. I didn't see that coming, really. He's more interested in his family's legacy and preserving that than, himself. I thought that was a really refreshing end to his character. I didn't see that coming. That was something that I thought was unusual and just kind of different to we've overcome the villain gets arrested, we never see them again.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Ed Harris was the superstar in this film. I thought he was the most interesting character. I don't fully understand quite why they cared about clearing his grandfather's name, or how it really ties into how getting that gold disproves that his grandfather wasn't a wrong. And it was a bit of a confusing ending. It was, personally. Yeah. But I did like the redemption of Ed Harris. I thought that was well done. It was a tiny bit Crystal Skull at the end.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, but yeah, so they find the city of gold and all is well with the world at the end of it. So that was National Treasure Book of Secrets. So the two questions we ask again: did you enjoy this film, Stu?
Yeah, I enjoyed it more than the first. I thought everything was tighter. The characters were better. It just seemed like the first one. Again, it's weird how these things are linked to Uncharted, but the first one was a decent game. The second one was much, much better. The second one for me was a much, much better film than the first, even though it's in the same universe and it is, like you said, almost beat for beat in its kind of its structure and whatever. But I like this one more. But again, it's not obviously not a great film. It's an entertaining film. You wouldn't watch this and write a 3,000 word dissertation on. But again, if you want to watch a nice, fun family film, watch this. It's fun. Probably, if I give the first one a 7, this is a 7.5. So it was enjoyable for me. I liked it.
Cool. Matt, what are you saying?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I echo majority of that. It felt like it was more organised and it wasn't as much of a let's throw shit on a wall and see if it sticks. I enjoyed it. I don't think it quite hit the heights. Makes it sound like the first one was a masterpiece, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Whenever we go cross continent, from one location to the other location, it always feels like it's more luxury and self-indulgence. A little bit. It was a bit. I mean, there was one. We didn't mention it really when we're talking about when we're talking about the puzzles and stuff like that. The desk and the sequence of them cutting to the locks. I actually found that really satisfying. I really enjoyed that. It just looked visually, it looked really nice. Yeah, I enjoyed the film. Again, wouldn't rush to watch it again. It's very much a Sunday afternoon. I've had my Sunday dinner. I need something to mong out to. Felt like one of those films. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it more than the first one. There were elements of so bad it's good in parts. And then there were just elements of actually this is all right.
Yep.
Ed Harris very much saved the day for it. I think everyone else was just kind of there. Whereas with him, you felt like he's actually put a bit of effort into his character and he's tried to develop something. So, don't get me wrong, I probably won't watch it ever again. But if it was on and there was nothing else, I wouldn't necessarily turn it over.
Yeah, that's fair.
Fair. So the second question, based on this film and this film alone, is Nick Cage good or bad? Matt, do you want to start there?
I'm going to, because it's either a yes or a no, and no in between. I'm going to say yes, on the basis that I was entertained by his character. He had some of the elements that I really like about Nick Cage, and I think it was a more tapped in, crazier. You know how I mentioned about National Treasure. I want my treasure hunters to be flawed, and I want them to be a little crazy, and I want them to be a bit kooky. And that's exactly what Nick Cage was in this, to more of an extent than the first one. So I'm going to say yes, because I've got to give you a yes or no answer. So yes.
That's perfectly fair. My answer was going to be yes for exactly the same reasons. I want my Nick Cage to be a bit off the wall, and that's what we got that we didn't get in the first one. So for me, it's a yes as well. Stu?
Yeah, exactly the same. I think he seemed more of a believable character in this one as well, strangely enough. Even with the whacking, he seemed to fit in a way. Whereas in the first, in the first it was more found in than this one. And when you think sequels don't normally do it that way, but this
it's
one
strange, yeah.
Yeah, I'll say
he's lecturer Indy in the first one. He's Indiana Jones in the second one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, definitely. So there we go. That's our first picture pod done and out of the way. I'm quite pleased with that. The two National Treasures. They were could have been worse films to kick it off with.
Thoroughly enjoyable nonsense. I think that's the best way you could describe them. They're not going to win any awards for being intellectual, but turn your brain off fun. Like Matt said, Sunday afternoon adventure films. That's exactly what they are, and it was a fun ride, fun 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a nice little warm up for something with a little more substance. I think when we look into our cult heroes' acting career, we'll uncover a few more noteworthy performances. But it definitely felt like a nice warm up, and I'm glad that we've covered it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So yeah, once again, thank you for joining us on our podcast. You can follow us on @CageFightingPod on Twitter. If you've got any questions you'd like answering on our next question cast, please email us at cagefightingpod@gmail.com. Matt, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, guys. Stay safe.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Yeah, see you later. See you on the next one.
And from me, I would like to say bangs and mash, bubbles and squeak, smoked eel pipe, haggis. See ya.
It's all right, that's enough.
Smackers and mash. Bubbles and squeak. Smoked eel pie.
Sir?
Hi, guys! That's it!